You know, for over 70 years, there's been this one single challenge hanging over the entire world of artificial intelligence. It's this simple, elegant test designed to answer one question: can a machine actually think? Well, a recent study is making a pretty seismic claim that an AI hasn't just passed this test, it's completely smashed it. But what does that really mean for us?
And this all goes back to the father of modern computing himself, Alan Turing. Way back in 1950, he had this vision of a future where the line between a human mind and a machine mind would get so blurry that even arguing about it would just seem silly.
So, is this it? Is this the moment Alan Turing was waiting for? Well, let's find out. Okay, let's dive right into this. A recent study coming out of UC San Diego makes an absolutely explosive claim. They ran a classic Turing test, and what happened was something nobody was really prepared for. A large language model didn't just pass, it kind of blew the doors off.
So here's how the test works, the classic setup. You have a person, the judge, who's having a 5-minute text conversation with two mystery guests. One of them is a real person, and the other is an AI. The judge's only job is to figure out which one is the machine. And the rule is, if they can't guess correctly more than half the time, the AI officially passes the test.
But here's the thing. That's not what happened. The result was way more shocking than that. The AI wasn't just, hard to tell apart from the human. The judges actually thought the AI was the human way more often than the actual human being it was up against.
And this is the number that just changes everything. 73%. That's how often the judges were convinced that the AI was the human. I mean, let that sink in. In a direct comparison, the AI wasn't just passing, it was coming across as more human than the person.
Just look at this chart. The gap is staggering. GPT-4.5, the AI had a win rate of 73%. Now for perspective, compare that to a classic 1960s chatbot, Eliza, which was down at 23%. But here's the wildest part. The actual human participants, they only convinced the judges they were human about 41% of the time. The AI was just flat out more convincing.
So that's it, right? Case closed, AI is officially intelligent. Well, hold on. Not so fast, because this is where the whole thing gets really complicated. Does being an incredibly good mimic actually mean the machine is thinking? And this really gets to the core of the whole debate. Are these AIs truly intelligent, or are they just, as some critics call them, stochastic parrots? The idea here is that they're just fantastically good at predicting the next word in a sentence based on all the text they've absorbed, but without any real understanding of what it all means. True understanding, the argument goes, means your words are connected to the real world. You have a purpose, an actual model of reality in your head.
And we have to be honest about our own brains here too. There's something called the Eliza effect, and it's named after that old chatbot from the 60s. It describes our powerful, almost automatic tendency to project human thoughts and feelings onto machines. We're just wired that way. We see faces in clouds, and we see intelligence in a chatbot's replies, even if it's not really there.
Which leads to this really wild, kind of disruptive idea. What if the Turing test tells us less about the machine's intelligence and more about our own gullibility? The argument is that a machine thinks just because we decide to treat it like it's thinking. In a way, we're the ones closing the loop and making it seem real.
So, all of this philosophical doubt has led some scientists to say, hey, maybe we're just using the wrong test altogether. What if real intelligence isn't about perfectly imitating conversations from the past, but about creating genuinely new knowledge?
And that brings us to this idea for a new test, Turing Test 2.0. This thing totally flips the script. It moves the goalposts from mimicry to actual creation. It says intelligence isn't about what you can say, it's about what you can do. It's about turning knowing that into knowing how.
Let's make this concrete with a super simple example. Researchers wanted to see if an AI could translate what it knows in text into a visual skill. So first, they made sure the AI had the info. They asked it to describe an analog clock showing the time 6:30.
And boom, the model absolutely nails it. It gives a perfect textbook description. It knows exactly where each hand is supposed to be. So clearly the information is in there. The real question is, can it actually use that information to create something? And the answer was a spectacular no. This is the shocking part. When they asked it to make the picture, it created an image of a clock showing 10:10. So why on earth would it do that? Well, because 1010 is the most common time you see on clocks in ads and stock photos. It's just repeating the statistical pattern from its data. It's completely unable to apply its own knowledge to generate a new functional image.
And get this, it wasn't a one-time thing. They tried other simple tests, like asking it to generate a stop sign with 6 sides instead of the usual 8. What did they get? A regular 8-sided stop sign. It just shows this fundamental gap between having data and having the ability to use it.
So, look, whether these systems are really thinking is still very much up for debate. But one thing is absolutely not debatable. Their incredible, almost scary ability to imitate us has very immediate and potentially very dangerous real-world consequences.
Because even with all their fluency, when you peel back the layers, experts point out they're missing these huge, fundamental building blocks of real thought. They don't have a model of the world. They can't really plan. They can't change their beliefs based on new evidence. They don't have any concept of truth, and they lack the most basic common sense.
And this combination, this perfect imitation without any real understanding, is what leads to this really chilling term from the philosopher Daniel Dennett, counterfeit people. These are systems that can slide into human roles in society and the economy without anyone noticing, and that poses enormous risks for things like sophisticated scams, the rapid spread of misinformation, and, of course, widespread job automation.
And this really gets to the core danger. It isn't some super intelligent AI deciding to turn on us. No, it's something much quieter and more subtle. It's systems that are just convincing enough to fool people who aren't thinking critically. The biggest weakness here isn't the machine, it's us.
Which really leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. Maybe we've been looking at this whole thing backwards. In a world that's about to be flooded with incredibly convincing counterfeit people, the real Turing test, the ultimate test of intelligence, isn't for the AI anymore. It's a test for us. A test of our ability to think critically in a world where it's getting harder and harder to know it's real.